They invaded Earth. Humans responded with, finally, a reason to get really nasty. Before we unlock the truth, like if you think they underestimated the wrong species, enjoy the story. The vast expanse of space stretched endlessly before the Dominion's 7th Fleet, their hulking vessels cutting through the void like predators stalking prey. Admiral Selene Vora stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Eternal Conquest, her pale blue skin gleaming under the harsh artificial lighting. Her elongated skull, typical of her species, housed a brain that had orchestrated the subjugation of 17 systems. Today would be the 18th. Solar System Defense Perimeter in sight. Admiral announced First Officer Talon Rawl, his voice carrying the characteristic resonance of the Zephyrian species. His 4 arms worked efficiently across multiple control panels, coordinating the fleet's approach. Preliminary scans indicate minimal resistance. Vora's lipless mouth curved into what passed for a smile among her kind. Minimal. How delightfully accurate, First Officer. Their entire defensive grid consists of outdated orbital platforms and what appears to be a handful of primitive vessels. She gestured with one clawed hand toward the tactical display. These humans have barely mastered interplanetary travel, yet they dare to establish colonies in contested space. The bridge crew, a mix of species from across the Dominion's conquered territories, shared knowing glances. Another easy victory for the Empire's unstoppable war machine. The humans had been observed for decades, their rapid technological development noted but dismissed as the desperate scrambling of a young species trying to catch up to galactic civilization. Communications incoming from the human homeworld reported the sensor operator her insectoid features twitching with amusement. They're requesting dialogue. How charmingly naive, Vora mused. Put them through. Let's see what these primitives have to say before we teach them their place in the cosmic order. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing a small human female with graying hair and weathered features. She wore a simple military uniform devoid of the elaborate decorations favored by more advanced species. When she spoke, her voice carried a calmness that seemed almost absurd given the circumstances. Admiral Vora of the Dominion 7th Fleet. I am General Eleanor Reeves of the United Earth Defense Force. We've been expecting you. Talon's secondary arms paused over his controls. Expecting us, Admiral, our approach vector was classified at the highest levels. Vora silenced him with a gesture, her attention focused on the human commander. There was something in the woman's demeanor, not fear, not desperation, but a quiet confidence that seemed wildly inappropriate. General Reeves, your scouts performed admirably to detect our arrival. It matters little. You have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally, or we will demonstrate why the Dominion has never failed to achieve its objectives. 1 hour, Reeves repeated, nodding thoughtfully. That should be just enough time. Thank you for your consideration, Admiral. We've been waiting for you. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in puzzled silence. Vora stared at the blank screen, her tactical mind processing the exchange. In her 2 centuries of military service, she had witnessed every possible response to imminent conquest, panic-defiance attempts at negotiation, pleas for mercy. She had never encountered gratitude. Admiral Talon ventured, the human's response was unusual. Indeed. Vora settled into her command chair, a nagging uncertainty beginning to form in the back of her mind. Tactical assessment. What could they possibly be waiting for? The weapons officer, a hulking member of the Chronari warrior caste, rumbled his response. Perhaps reinforcements, Admiral. Though our intelligence indicates no other human fleets in this sector. Then what? Vora's voice carried a sharp edge. In the vast calculus of galactic warfare, there were no surprises, only failures of intelligence. Begin scanning for anomalous signatures. I want to know every asteroid, every piece of space debris, every cosmic speck within 10 light minutes of our position. As the fleet's sensors swept space, Vora found herself studying the tactical display with growing unease. The human defenses were exactly as reported: inadequate, outdated, insufficient. Yet General Reeves had displayed the confidence of a commander holding a winning hand. In the depths of space invisible to Dominion sensors, thousands of quantum-entangled beacons began their silent countdown. The command deck of the Eternal Conquest hummed with the quiet efficiency of a well-oiled war machine. Officers from a dozen species worked in perfect synchronization, their actions guided by centuries of Dominion military doctrine. This was how empires were built, through superior organization, overwhelming force, and the absolute certainty of victory. Admiral Vora moved between stations like a conductor orchestrating a familiar symphony. Status report on the human defensive positions. Unchanged, Admiral, replied the tactical officer. 12 orbital defense platforms, approximately 47 vessels of varying classes. Combined firepower insufficient to threaten even our escort frigates. Talon's mandibles clicked in what his species considered laughter. Admiral, I've reviewed the humans' military broadcasts. They're actually mobilizing civilian vessels. Cargo haulers, mining ships, even converted passenger liners. It's almost endearing in its futility. The bridge crew shared the amusement. In the grand theater of galactic warfare, this was comedy, a species so desperate they would throw commercial vessels against the Dominion's finest warships. It spoke to a fundamental misunderstanding of how real power operated in the galaxy. Any word from their General Reeves? Vora inquired, settling into her command throne. Radio silent since the initial contact, Admiral, though we are detecting increased chatter on their military frequencies. Tactical coordination most likely, though what they hope to coordinate with such limited assets. The communications officer left the sentence hanging the absurdity self-evident. Vora nodded absently, her attention drawn to the chronometer. 37 minutes remained in the ultimatum. In her experience, this period often proved the most revealing. Weaker species would spend these final moments in increasingly desperate attempts at negotiation. Warrior cultures might use the time to position their forces for a glorious but doomed last stand. The truly wise would begin surrender protocols. The humans, however, seemed to be doing nothing. Admiral, the sensor operator's voice carried a note of confusion. I'm detecting some unusual energy signatures from the human vessels. Define unusual. Vora commanded, rising from her chair. The readings are inconsistent with known human technology. Their power generation appears to have increased exponentially, but the emissions don't match any propulsion or weapon systems in our database. Talon's primary arms gestured dismissively. Likely desperation measures, Admiral. Perhaps they're overloading their reactors in preparation for ramming attacks. Some primitive species resort to such tactics when facing annihilation. Perhaps. But Vora's unease was growing. She had built her reputation on thorough preparation and attention to detail. The human response, or lack thereof, defied every behavioral pattern in the Dominion's extensive databases. Expand sensor sweeps. I want detailed readings on every human vessel, every piece of orbital infrastructure, every Admiral. The sensor operator's voice cracked with sudden urgency. Massive energy bloom detected. It's everywhere. The tactical display exploded into a constellation of new contacts. Where moments before space had appeared empty, thousands upon thousands of objects materialized as if stepping out of reality itself. They emerged not from hyperspace. The Dominion's sensors would have detected the characteristic distortions, but from what appeared to be localized space-time anomalies. What am I looking at? Vora demanded, her voice cutting through the sudden chaos on the bridge. Unknown, Admiral. The objects appear to be small craft, roughly fighter-sized, but the emission signatures— The tactical officer's training warred with what his instruments were telling him. Admiral, these readings are impossible. No species possesses technology capable of creating stable quantum tunnels on this scale. Talon's confident demeanor evaporated as he studied his displays. "Admiral, I'm counting over 10,000 individual contacts. They've completely surrounded the fleet. How did they... The answer came in General Reeves's voice, transmitted simultaneously to every Dominion vessel in the system. Her tone remained maddeningly calm, as if she were discussing weather patterns rather than what appeared to be the largest fleet deployment in recorded history. "Admiral Vora, thank you for waiting. As promised, we're ready to begin." The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Around them, space itself seemed to have transformed from an empty battlefield into a carefully orchestrated trap. The hunter had become the hunted in the span of heartbeats. Vora stared at the display, her tactical mind racing through possibilities and finding them all inadequate. In the periphery of her vision, she could see her crew looking to her for orders for the confidence that had carried them through a dozen successful campaigns. For the first time in her military career, Admiral Selene Vora had no idea what to do next. The universe had shifted, and with it every assumption the Dominion had held about humanity. Admiral Vora stood frozen at the center of what had become not a battle bridge but the control room of a trap she was only now beginning to comprehend. "Tactical analysis," she ordered, her voice steady despite the chaos erupting around her. A lifetime of military discipline was the only thing standing between her and complete panic. "Admiral, the human craft are maintaining position at optimal strike range. No aggressive movements detected, but their formation suggests they could engage the entire fleet simultaneously." The tactical officer's voice carried the weight of impossible mathematics. "Based on standard engagement protocols, we should begin evasive maneuvers immediately." "Standard protocols." Vora repeated the words, tasting bitter. Nothing about this situation fell within standard parameters. "First officer, raw damage assessment from the... whatever just happened." Talon's 4 arms worked frantically across his stations. "No damage reported from any vessel, Admiral. The human craft appeared without causing any spatial distortions that would typically damage nearby ships. Whatever technology they employed, it's..." He paused, struggling with concepts that shouldn't exist. "It's surgical in its precision." A new voice cut through the bridge's tension. Captain Ryan Holt of the Human Quantum Strike Squadron. His transmission reached them on a frequency that should have been impossible to access, encrypted beyond any known breaking algorithm. "Dominion vessels, this is Captain Holt of the Sentinel Wing. Admiral Vora General Reeves has authorized me to provide a demonstration of our defensive capabilities. Please observe." Before anyone could respond, the human formation shifted with a coordination that defied belief. 300 small craft accelerated toward the Dominion's forward line. Not the chaotic charge of desperate fighters, but the calculated precision of a surgeon's blade. "All batteries open fire," Vora commanded. "Target the approaching craft." The Dominion's response was immediate and overwhelming. Particle beams, plasma cannons, and kinetic projectiles filled space with deadly energy. Any conventional fighter squadron would have been vaporized instantly. Instead, the human craft danced. They moved through the barrage like water flowing around stones, each vessel following impossible flight paths that should have torn them apart under the forces involved. Weapons fire that should have been unavoidable simply wasn't there when the humans passed through those coordinates. "How?" whispered the weapons officer, his massive hands trembling over controls that had never failed him before. "How are they moving like that?" Captain Holt's voice answered as if he had heard the question. "Quantum probability navigation, courtesy of some very creative applications of physics you haven't discovered yet. Now, if you'll excuse me, we have a schedule to keep." The human craft reached the Dominion line, and what followed redefined Vora's understanding of naval warfare. Instead of the expected kamikaze attacks or torpedo runs, the humans deployed what could only be described as surgical strikes. Precise beam weapons lanced out from the small craft, targeting not the hulls or vital systems of the Dominion vessels, but specific subsystems with impossible accuracy. The first frigate lost its main guns in a display of sparks and venting atmosphere. The second lost maneuvering thrusters. The third found its shields collapsing as the humans somehow reversed the polarity of its defensive grid. Within 90 seconds, 12 Dominion warships had been systematically disabled without a single loss of life. Status report. Vora's voice cut through the stunned silence that had fallen over her bridge. Admiral... Talon's voice was barely above a whisper. They're not trying to destroy us, they're disabling our ships without harming the crews. The precision required for such attacks is impossible, finished the tactical officer. Admiral, this level of accuracy would require targeting computers capable of real-time molecular analysis and prediction algorithms that can calculate quantum probability matrices faster than should be physically possible. On the view screen, General Reeves appeared again, her weathered features displaying what might have been sympathetic understanding. Admiral Vora, I hope this demonstration has been educational. Your ships and crews are unharmed. Disabled, but unharmed. This was merely a sample of what we call minimum necessary force. Vora found her voice, though it felt foreign in her throat. General, your technology appears to exceed our intelligence estimates. Perhaps we should discuss terms. Terms? Reeves' eyebrows rose slightly. Admiral, I'm afraid you misunderstand the situation. This isn't a negotiation. This is an orientation. You see, you've stumbled into something much larger than a simple territorial dispute. The transmission shifted to show a wider view of the system, and Vora's breath caught in her throat. The 10,000 human craft she had initially detected were only a fraction of the total force. Spread throughout the system, concealed until this moment, was a fleet that dwarfed anything in recorded galactic history. My God, Talon breathed, using an expression he had learned from intercepted human communications. How many ships are there? General Reeves smiled, but there was no warmth in the expression. Enough, First Officer Rawl, more than enough. The demonstration was over, but Admiral Vora realized with growing horror that the real lesson was just beginning. The silence that followed General Reeves's revelation stretched across space like a funeral shroud. Admiral Vora stared at the tactical display, watching the impossible numbers cascade across her screen. The human fleet wasn't just large, it was strategically positioned throughout the system, with a precision that spoke to months, perhaps years, of preparation. Admiral, Talon's voice was hollow. Our long-range sensors are detecting additional human formations in the outer system. They're everywhere. How did our intelligence miss something of this magnitude? Vora's mind raced through the implications. The Dominion's intelligence apparatus was legendary throughout the galaxy, capable of tracking fleet movements across hundreds of light years. Yet somehow, humanity had assembled what appeared to be the largest military force in recorded history without triggering a single early warning system. Because they wanted us to miss it, she said finally, the pieces falling into place with horrifying clarity. Those colonies we destroyed, the minimal resistance we encountered, it was all deliberate. They were buying time. Dr. Marcus Kingsley materialized on the view screen beside General Reeves, his dark features serious but not unkind. Admiral Vora, I'm Dr. Kingsley's xenobiological specialist and military attaché. I believe some context might be helpful at this juncture. Vora steadied herself against the command console. Doctor, I'm beginning to suspect that everything we thought we knew about your species has been carefully orchestrated misinformation. Not misinformation, Kingsley corrected gently. Simply incomplete data. You see, Admiral, when humanity first detected your approach to our territory, we faced a choice. We could meet you as equals, advanced technology, superior numbers, overwhelming force, or... He paused, consulting what appeared to be a handheld device. We could let you reveal your intentions first. A test, Vora breathed. You were testing us. In a manner of speaking, you see, we've been monitoring galactic politics for quite some time. The Dominion's expansion patterns, your subjugation protocols, your treatment of conquered species. We've been watching, learning, preparing. General Reeves leaned forward. Admiral, what you're witnessing isn't just a defensive response. It's the culmination of a project we call Aegis Mirror, humanity's first foray into truly advanced warfare. As if summoned by her words, space around the Dominion fleet began to shimmer. Massive structures previously invisible to sensors materialized in perfect geometric formations. They resembled crystalline arrays, each one easily the size of a small moon, positioned at strategic points throughout the system. "Dear gods," whispered the sensor operator. "Admiral, those structures, they're not ships. I don't know what they are." Dr. Kingsley's voice carried a note of pride. Aegis Mirror satellites, each one capable of absorbing, redirecting, and amplifying energy on a planetary scale. Think of them as cosmic artillery platforms. "Impossible," Talon stammered. "The energy requirements alone would exceed the total output of most star systems." "Would they?" Kingsley's smile was enigmatic. "Tell me, First Officer, how much do you know about humanity's approach to energy generation?" Before Talon could respond, one of the Dominion's rear guard cruisers, apparently acting on orders from High Command, opened fire with its main battery. The massive particle beam lanced across space toward the nearest human formation, carrying enough destructive force to vaporize a small city. The beam struck one of the crystalline satellites and simply stopped. For a moment, the energy hung, suspended in space, visible as a brilliant golden lance frozen between the Dominion vessel and its target. Then, slowly, the beam began to rotate, its trajectory shifting with mathematical precision until it pointed directly back at the ship that had fired it. "I strongly recommend your gunner cease fire," Dr. Kingsley said conversationally. The warning came too late. The redirected beam struck the Dominion cruiser with its own energy, amplified through processes that defied conventional physics. The ship's shields collapsed instantly. Its hull armor vaporized, its internal systems fried by its own weapons fire. In the space of heartbeats, a mighty warship became a helpless hulk drifting through space. Yet somehow, impossibly, life support remained intact. The crew survived. "This is getting beyond my understanding of physics." Vora admitted her scientific training warring with the evidence of her sensors. "Doctor, what exactly are we dealing with here?" "The fruit of human ingenuity when properly motivated," Kingsley replied. "You see, Admiral, when faced with the prospect of galactic warfare, we didn't just build bigger guns. We reimagined the fundamental nature of conflict itself." General Reeves stood her small frame, somehow commanding the attention of every being in the system. "Admiral Vora, I'm going to share something with you that will help you understand the scope of your situation. For the past 50 years, humanity has been preparing for this moment. Not because we sought war, but because we recognized its inevitability." 50 years? Vora's voice cracked slightly. "Your species has only had interstellar capability for 30 years. Has it—" Reeves's smile was sad. "Admiral, how do you think we developed interstellar capability so quickly? How do you suppose a species that couldn't leave its own solar system suddenly appeared on the galactic stage with technology that impressed even the advanced races?" The implications hit Vora like a physical blow. "You've been hiding your true capabilities since first contact." "Longer," Dr. Kingsley confirmed. "Much longer. You see, humanity learned early that in a galaxy full of predators, the best defense is to appear harmless until you're ready to reveal your teeth." Around them, space continued to fill with impossible displays of technology. Human ships materialized from folded space energy weapons that bent the laws of physics, painted deadly geometries across the void, and through it all, not a single Dominion life was lost. Admiral Vora realized with growing horror that she was witnessing not just a military defeat, but the emergence of a new apex predator in the galactic hierarchy. Throughout the galaxy, on 1,000 different worlds, Beings who had never heard of humanity watched in stunned amazement as the impossible unfolded. The Dominion's assault on the Sol system was being broadcast across every major communications network, not by design but because the energy signatures involved were so massive they were impossible to contain. In the crystalline halls of the Etherian Collective, beings of pure energy paused their millennia-long contemplations to observe. On the war worlds of the Crexian Empire, hardened, veterans stopped their training to stare at displays showing a level of tactical precision they had never imagined possible. Even the ancient guardians who had watched civilizations rise and fall for eons took notice of the small blue world that was rewriting the rules of galactic power. Admiral Vora felt the weight of those watching eyes even as her own tactical situation continued to deteriorate. A status of the fleet, she ordered, though she already knew. The answer would be grim. 47% of our vessels are disabled but intact, Talon reported, his voice carrying the hollow tone of a being forced to confront the unthinkable. No casualties reported, but, Admiral, they could have destroyed us all a dozen times over. They're deliberately preserving our lives. Why? The question escaped Vora's lips before she could stop it. In her centuries of military service, she had never encountered an enemy that prioritized the preservation of opposing forces over their own tactical advantage. General Reeves's voice answered from the view screen as if she had been waiting for exactly this question. Because Admiral, true strength isn't measured by your ability to destroy, but by your capacity to choose not to. Captain Holt appeared alongside the general, his expression serious but not unkind. Admiral Vora, you're receiving tactical data from the engagement. I trust your analysis teams will find it educational. The data streams that flooded into the Dominion's computers revealed the true scope of humanity's capabilities. Each human vessel was equipped with technology that seemed to blend hard science with impossibility. Quantum manipulation drives that allowed instant repositioning across battlefield distances, weapon systems that could target individual molecules within enemy equipment, defensive grids that apparently operated by convincing incoming fire that it preferred to be somewhere else. This is insanity, the tactical officer whispered, staring at readouts that his training insisted couldn't exist. Admiral, according to these readings, the human ships are operating with energy efficiency rates that exceed theoretical maximums by orders of magnitude. Dr. Kingsley materialized on a secondary display, his expression patient but firm. Not insanity, Lieutenant. Applied theoretical physics combined with what your species might call aggressive creativity. You see, when humanity realized we were not alone in the universe, we didn't just prepare for contact. We prepared for every possible outcome of that contact. Including war, Vora stated flatly. Including war, Kingsley confirmed. But more importantly, Admiral, we prepared for the aftermath of war. The question that obsessed our planners wasn't, how do we win, but rather, how do we win in a way that creates something better than what existed before? As if to demonstrate this philosophy, the human fleet began a maneuver that defied every principle of military logic Vora had ever learned. Instead of pressing their overwhelming advantage, instead of demanding surrender or negotiating from a position of strength, the human ships began to reorganize. "What are they doing?" Talon asked, his mandibles clicking in confusion. The answer came as human vessels began linking with Dominion ships not in boarding actions, but in what appeared to be technical assistance operations. Small craft emerged from the human fleet carrying equipment and personnel who immediately began working to repair the damage their own forces had inflicted. "They're fixing our ships," the engineering officer reported in a voice that suggested she was questioning her own sanity. "Admiral, human technical teams are restoring power to disabled systems, repairing damaged equipment, and they're upgrading our technology while they work." Captain Holt's voice carried across the communications array. "Admiral Vora, we're transmitting repair schedules to your fleet. Estimated restoration time for full operational capacity is 6 hours. During this period, your vessels will also receive upgrades to defensive systems, life support, efficiency, and navigational accuracy. Why? Vora demanded. This makes no tactical sense. You have us completely at your mercy. Do we? General Reeves tilted her head slightly. Admiral, let me ask you a question. If we released your fleet right now, fully repaired and upgraded, where would you go? The question hung in space like a challenge Vora couldn't quite grasp. We would return to Dominion space to report. And what would you report? Vora found herself staring at the tactical display, watching human and Dominion crews working side by side to repair damage that the humans could have made permanent. Around them, the impossible fleet maintained its positions with a patience that spoke to absolute confidence. I would report, she said slowly, that the Dominion has encountered a species that could destroy us utterly, but chooses not to. Precisely. Dr. Kingsley smiled. And what do you think the galaxy will make of that report? For the first time since the engagement began, Vora allowed herself to think beyond the immediate tactical situation. News of this encounter would spread across every communication network in known space. The story wouldn't just be about humanity's technological superiority, it would be about their restraint, their precision, their apparent commitment to preserving life even among those who had come to destroy them. You're not just defeating the Dominion, she realized. You're demonstrating to the entire galaxy that there's an alternative to the way we've always done things. General Reeves nodded. Every species watching this encounter is learning something new about what's possible. They're seeing that strength and mercy aren't mutually exclusive, that victory doesn't require destruction, that the old patterns of conquest and subjugation aren't the only options available. Oh, as if summoned by her words, communication signals began flooding in from across the galaxy, the Etherian Collective requesting diplomatic contact, the Crexian Empire proposing trade negotiations, even the isolationist Wanderer fleets expressing interest in establishing formal relations. Admiral Vora watched the communications board light up with incoming messages and realized that she was witnessing the birth of a new galactic order. One built not on fear and domination, but on the radical concept that perhaps there was a better way for civilizations to interact. In the depths of space, surrounded by the impossible fleet that had redefined galactic warfare in the span of hours, Admiral Vora found herself in the unprecedented position of watching her enemies repair her ships while the galaxy looked on in amazement. The contradictions were staggering, and yet somehow they made perfect sense. Dr. Kingsley reappeared on the main view screen this time, accompanied by what appeared to be a comprehensive historical database. Admiral, I believe it's time you understood exactly what you've encountered. With your permission, I'd like to share something with you, and with the galaxy at large. Vora gestured weakly toward the display. At this point, additional revelations seemed almost anticlimactic. Doctor, I suspect you're going to share it regardless of my permission. True, Kingsley admitted with a slight smile. But courtesy costs nothing, and as you're about to learn, humans place considerable value on courtesy, even toward those who came to destroy us. The main display shifted to show a three-dimensional map of human space, but not as the Dominion's intelligence had portrayed it. Instead of the scattered primitive settlements they had expected to find, the map revealed a civilization that spanned dozens of systems connected by infrastructure that defied every assumption about human technological development. Ladies, gentlemen, and varied beings of the galaxy, Dr. Kingsley began his voice now broadcasting across multiple communication networks simultaneously. I am Dr. Marcus Kingsley, representing the United Earth Defense Consortium and the Terran Systems Alliance. Today's demonstration was not intended as an act of aggression, but rather as a necessary revelation. Images flowed across the display. Human colonies that existed far beyond what Dominion intelligence had detected, research facilities conducting experiments that pushed the boundaries of known physics, and, perhaps most stunning of all, evidence of contact with dozens of species that the Dominion had never even suspected existed. You see, Kingsley continued, Humanity has been aware of galactic civilization for considerably longer than you might expect. We've been watching, learning, and yes, preparing. Not for conquest, but for the inevitable moment when our existence could no longer remain hidden. Admiral Vora stared at the revelations unfolding before her. Doctor, the intelligence implications alone. How did you hide all of this from every major power in the galaxy? Carefully? General Reeves interjected her voice, carrying the weight of decades of careful planning. Admiral, when a species reaches the stars and discovers they're not alone, they face a fundamental choice. They can announce themselves immediately and hope for a peaceful reception, or they can observe first and prepare for every possible outcome. Captain Holt stepped into view, his expression serious. Admiral, what you are seeing represents 50 years of preparation for this exact scenario. Not because we wanted war, but because we recognize that in a galaxy where might makes right, peaceful species don't survive long without the means to protect themselves. The display shifted again, this time showing humanity's true military capabilities. Not just the fleet that surrounded them now, but production facilities that could manufacture vessels faster than most species could, crew them defensive installations that made the Aegis Mirror satellites look primitive by comparison, and perhaps most unsettling of all, evidence that human colonies existed in systems that Dominion had never even surveyed. The question, Dr. Kingsley said quietly, is what happens now? You see, the revelation of humanity's true capabilities creates certain diplomatic necessities. Vora felt a chill that had nothing to do with the environmental systems. Meaning, General Reeves replied that the galaxy now knows there's a new player in the game, a player that has demonstrated the ability to neutralize the Dominion's finest fleet without casualties, while simultaneously repairing the damage inflicted and upgrading the very ships they disabled. Communication signals continued to flood in from across known space. The Etherian Collective was requesting immediate audience. The Crexian Empire wanted to discuss mutual defense treaties. Even the ancient Guardians were breaking their millennia-long silence to establish contact. Every major power is recalculating their strategic positions right now, Captain Holt observed. The balance of power that has existed for thousands of years just shifted fundamentally. Dr. Kingsley nodded. Which brings us to a crucial point, Admiral Vora. Humanity didn't reveal itself to start a war. We revealed ourselves to prevent a much larger one. I don't understand, Vora admitted. The Dominion's expansion pattern has been noted by others besides humanity, General Reeves explained. The Etherian Collective has been growing increasingly concerned about your Empire's aggressive policies. The Crexian Empire sees you as a potential threat to their own territories. Even the Wanderer fleets have begun to view Dominion expansion as a destabilizing force. The implications were staggering. You're saying the Dominion was already heading toward a multi-front war. Within the next decade, certainly, Dr. Kingsley confirmed. Our intelligence suggests that a coalition was already forming to contain Dominion expansion. Your attack on our colony simply provided the catalyst for our emergence onto the galactic stage. Captain Holt stepped forward. Admiral, what you're witnessing isn't just a demonstration of human military capability. It's a proposal for a different kind of galactic order, one based on cooperation rather than conquest, on strength used to protect rather than subjugate. Vora stared at the communication board, watching requests for contact stream in from species across the galaxy. And you expect the Dominion to simply accept this new paradigm? We expect, General Reeves said firmly, that intelligent beings will recognize opportunity when it presents itself. The old way? Constant expansion subjugation of weaker species, rule through fear. That way leads to endless war and eventual collapse. We're offering something different. What exactly? Dr. Kingsley smiled. A partnership, Admiral. Imagine what the Dominion's organizational capabilities could accomplish when combined with human innovation and the specialized knowledge of dozens of other species. Imagine fleets exploring the unknown reaches of space for knowledge rather than conquest. Imagine colonies built for growth rather than control. Around them, space continued to showcase the impossible, as human vessels finished their repairs and began demonstrating technologies that pushed the boundaries of theoretical physics even further. Gravitational manipulation on a planetary scale, faster-than-light communication across galactic distances, energy systems that seemed to draw power from the fundamental forces of reality itself. "This is what's possible," General Reeves said quietly, "when civilizations choose cooperation over conquest. The question, Admiral Vora, is whether the Dominion is ready to help us build something better than what came before." Admiral Vora realized that she was no longer watching a military demonstration. She was witnessing the birth of a new galaxy, 3 months after what historians would later call the Sol Revelation. Admiral Selene Vora stood in the Hall of Remembrance aboard humanity's newest diplomatic vessel, the Harmony. The irony wasn't lost on her. A former Dominion admiral now serving as mediator in the most significant galactic treaty negotiations in recorded history. The hall itself was a testament to human philosophy. Rather than monuments to victory or conquest, the walls displayed representations of every species they had encountered, including detailed histories and cultural achievements. At the center, a modest plaque bore a simple inscription: "To those who choose wisdom over warfare, cooperation over conquest." "Regrets, Admiral." Dr. Kingsley approached, carrying a steaming cup of what humans called coffee, a beverage that had somehow become standard diplomatic fare throughout the emerging coalition. Daily, Vora admitted studying the display dedicated to Dominion culture. To her surprise, it focused not on their military conquests but on their achievements in governance infrastructure, and the few instances where they had chosen mercy over destruction. But not about the decision to join your alliance. Through the observation deck's transparent aluminum windows, a sight that would have been impossible 6 months earlier filled the void. Ships from 17 different species worked in coordinated formations, their crews learning from each other, sharing technologies and techniques that had been closely guarded secrets for millennia. The Etherian Collective's energy manipulation techniques combined with Dominion organizational protocols. Captain Holt observed, joining them at the window. "The results are exceeding everyone's projections." Vora nodded, watching a joint construction project taking shape in the distance. Where once stood empty space, a station was growing that would serve as the first truly multi-species research facility. "Captain, may I ask you something that's been troubling me?" "Of course." "The day of the engagement at Sol, you could have destroyed our entire fleet in minutes. Why didn't you?" "The tactical advantage would have been absolute." Holt was quiet for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the construction beyond. "Because admiral destruction is easy. Creation is hard. Any species can build weapons capable of turning their enemies to ash, but building something that makes enemies into allies that requires a different kind of strength entirely." General Reeves appeared on the observation deck looking older than her years, but carrying herself with the satisfaction of someone who had seen impossible dreams become reality. "Admiral Vora, the final treaty protocols are ready for your review. The Dominion Council's response arrived this morning." Vora accepted the data pad with hands that no longer trembled at the mention of her former empire. The negotiations had been complex. How do you transform a military hierarchy built on conquest into a partner in galactic cooperation? The answer, as it turned out, lay in recognizing that many of the same skills that made the Dominion effective conquerors could make them equally effective builders. "Full acceptance," she announced after reviewing the documents. "The Dominion formally accepts membership in the Galactic Cooperation Alliance, agrees to the cessation of all conquest-based expansion, and commits to redirecting military assets toward exploration and defense." Dr. Kingsley raised his coffee cup in what humans called a toast. "To new beginnings." "To new beginnings," Vora agreed, though her thoughts were on ending as well. The galaxy that had existed yesterday, the one built on fear hierarchy and the endless struggle for dominance, was gone. In its place was something unprecedented, a civilization built on the radical notion that strength could be used to uplift rather than dominate. Admiral General Reeves said quietly, "There's something else. Something we wanted to share with you personally before it becomes public knowledge." Vora raised what passed for an eyebrow among her species. "More revelations, General. I'm not certain my worldview can withstand many more fundamental shifts." Reeves smiled. "Actually, this one might be comforting. You see, humanity's rapid technological development are seemingly impossible innovations. They weren't achieved in isolation. Meaning," Captain Holt gestured toward the multi-species construction project beyond. "Meaning we've been receiving help. Guidance from species that chose to remain hidden knowledge shared by beings who recognized that the galaxy needed new leadership but weren't ready to provide it themselves. So the implications were staggering and yet somehow not surprising." "You're telling me that humanity's emergence was orchestrated, guided," Dr. Kingsley corrected. "There are beings in this galaxy far older and wiser than any of our current civilizations. They've been watching, waiting for a species that could bring together the scattered children of the stars. We just happened to be the ones who passed their tests." Through the window, the first permanent residents were arriving at the new station. Beings from dozens of species who would work together on projects that no single civilization could have imagined. Research into technologies that would benefit everyone. Exploration missions that would expand the boundaries of known space not for conquest but for knowledge. Defense initiatives that would protect all member species from external threats. The galaxy we're building," General Reeves said softly. "It's bigger than human ambition, larger than any single species' vision. It's what becomes possible when beings choose to trust each other instead of fearing each other." As if summoned by her words, an announcement echoed through the ship's communication system. The ceremony was beginning, the formal establishment of the Galactic Cooperation Alliance with representatives from over 50 species in attendance. Not as conquerors or conquered, but as partners in an unprecedented venture. Admiral Vora straightened her uniform, no longer Dominion colors, but the deep blue and silver of the Alliance. "Shall we go make history?" "Actually," Dr. Kingsley said with a grin, "I think we're going to go make the future." As they walked toward the ceremony hall, Vora passed a final display that stopped her in her tracks. It was labeled "The Underdog Protocol, a case study in strategic misdirection," and it detailed humanity's centuries-long preparation for galactic contact. The display noted that among the many HFY stories that would emerge from this period, the most important lesson was simple. Never underestimate the power of appearing weak until you're ready to be strong. But beneath that was a smaller inscription that made her smile. True strength is knowing when not to use it. In the ceremony hall, as representatives from across the galaxy gathered to witness the birth of a new era, Admiral Selene Vora took her place not as a conquered enemy, but as a founding member of something that had never existed before, a galaxy united not by fear, but by hope. The final treaty was signed not with weapons pointed at any species, but with tools designed to build rather than destroy. And in that moment, the echo that would resonate across the stars for generations to come was not the sound of conquest, but the whisper of cooperation. The underdog had become the teacher, and the lesson would echo in stone throughout the galaxy. Sometimes the most dangerous opponent is the one who refuses to see you as an enemy. The Dominion came to Seoul expecting an easy victory over primitives. Instead, they discovered that the greatest civilizations aren't built through conquest, but through the courage to choose cooperation over domination. If this story of unlikely alliances and the power of unity resonated with you, like this video and subscribe for more epic tales of humanity's place among the stars. Because sometimes the most important victories aren't won on battlefields. They're won in the choices we make about who we want to be.